Okay.
Okay. We will get started in just 1 minute, everybody. Hang tight. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this month's webinar for busy lawyers, where in just a short 20 to 30 minutes, you'll walk away with practical information that you can put to use right away. This month, I have the privilege of introducing Sharon Nelson and Michael Maschke, and I'm going to give it to them to take away right now.
Thank you very much. And I believe you wanted to say to them that they could type in their questions and that we would hold on till the end to answer the questions, but we will hang on. We've got about 20 to 30 minutes here to give you a bit of a guide to securing your home network, which is something that legal professionals very often overlook and which is most imperative.
So we're going to get started today by going over what pieces of devices are within your home network.
We forgot the bio. Sorry, Mike. We've been having a little bit of troubleshooting issue here. So I am Sharon Nelson. I am the president of Sensei Enterprises in Fairfax, Virginia, which does cybersecurity, IT, and digital forensics. I'm the president, as I said, and also a former president of the Virginia State Bar, and I've written 18 books, co-authored many of them with Mike Maschke here. So there are 18 thus far, and we are crazy. And you go ahead and give a brief introduction, Mike.
I'm Mike Maschke. I'm the CEO of Sensei Enterprises, and I've been here 16 years. I'm a digital forensics expert and have testified as a forensics expert and cybersecurity expert in jurisdictions throughout Virginia and across the country.
And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
So we're going to start with a little bit of background about home networks and what devices make them up, and then we'll end with a discussion on the technologies and practical steps and recommendations that we offer and have to secure a network at home to protect you and your client's data. So starting with the network infrastructure at your house, this basically discusses or outlines the connectivity that your devices, whether it's your phone, your computer system, or any other network device you have within your house, connect to the internet. The different types you have, most of us will have wireless networks at home. Some houses are pre-wired for Ethernet cables to connect, where you plug a cord into the wall and your internet runs through the cable. And some houses offer a solution of both, where there's wireless available as well as wired. The internet provider that you have at your house typically will either be a cable internet connection, or a fiber internet connection through Verizon 5. Some of us still may be using DSL, which is over the phone line, or satellite. And there is also another one I wanted to mention here, that some cellular providers offer the ability for a hotspot, which is often referred to as a MiFi. And these are the types of different ways you can connect to the internet, and some are either business grade or consumer grade, depending on whether or not you have set up, a home office or you're just using your home internet connection. So the first thing that your internet service provider will do when they're setting you up with internet access is they'll typically give you either a cable modem, if you have a cable internet connection, as well as a router. And the router is what it's referred to as a border device. Typically, it is behind the device that your internet service provider gives you, such as a cable modem, and it is what protects the firewall/route. It is what protects and segregates your internal network and devices from the public internet. So talking about the router device, this is the piece of networking equipment that all devices connect to. All of your internet traffic flows through this device out to the internet, and when you're browsing websites or streaming Netflix, the connection to the internet comes back through this device to your local computer system. It filters and has the ability to see and interpret all traffic, and The problem with this device, though, is since it is the gateway, it is the single device that controls your internet access, it is the way, the manner in which external threats are able to attack and gain access to your internal network. Some of the attacks, some of the cyber threats, cyber attacks that you may experience both at home and, talking generally about your business or firm. We have denial of service. This is when a large number of hosts or malware will actually generate fake traffic to bring down a website or a device. You have man-in-the-middle attack, where you have a host or device in between your system and the destination, intercepting your communications. You have phishing and spear phishing, which is typically associated with how ransomware may get on your computer systems. You have drive-by attacks and SQL injection attacks.
Explain what that is, Mike.
SQL injection attacks are anytime your firm or a website has a database backend. Just think of like your bank or maybe an organization you belong to, and you have a web page that you can log into. What is happening in the backend is the database is running commands to pull data out of the database to display it to the visitor. And there are ways, depending on how the database is secured, that attackers and hackers can insert SQL commands, which are public knowledge, into the website to gain access to customer lists, personally identifiable information, or any other type of credit cards, any type of other information that may be stored in the backend database.
So as it's my turn to speak now, I want to note that Mike is the technologist supreme. So when Mike has gone through the weeds a little bit, I'm going to come in with the softer stuff, and that's fine, because it gives you a balance and it gives a chance for your brain to rest. So I did want to note that we have one very important statistic which is brand new, and that is, you've probably heard of conversational phishing, where people come on through email and they say, "Are you there? Are you in the office? Do you have a minute?" Something like that, and they start a conversation. So that has been the way that they establish rapport and ultimately get you to try to buy gift cards or do something that they want you to do. But there has been a 400% increase between July and November of 2019 in that form of attack. So if you're not training your employees on that, you should be. The other thing I want to mention is that one of the reasons why home networks have come to the fore is because of some of the things that that has happened. And with people who have unsecured home networks and who or they are attacked via social media, in this case it was Twitter, the Pentagon suffered quite a number of compromises, and what happened was people would go home with their machines and get on their home network, and it was actually their spouses who had clicked on something and therefore compromised the home network, and then they would take their infected machine back to the Pentagon. That has all been resolved, but it shows you how dangerous it can be to have the home network not secure, because if you get some problem on your home network, you could carry it to work with you and not realize that you're doing that. We would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about the Internet of Things and its security, because many lawyers now use all kinds of Internet of Things devices. They might use Alexa, they might use Google Assistant, it doesn't matter. But the big thing about these things is that if they are connected to your home network, these devices can in fact infect your home network. And they're not built with security in mind. They're built for high volume sales at a low price. So they are often wildly insecure. So you need to think about that as well, and be careful what you buy and how you configure it. And no matter what kind of device it is, change the defaults. The defaults are always available to everyone, and every 13-year-old knows how to do this and get the defaults. So the Ring doorbell has been in the news a lot. They had a lot of problems that they fixed. They were actually at one point for years, and they didn't fix this till recently. They actually were communicating your router's ID and password in clear text. That is now no longer true. but there has been a lot of publicity because Ring is now offering up cameras to the police and law enforcement and covering a lot of territory and presumably in violation of some people's interest in privacy. But we have everything. We have the appliances, the lights, the locks, and you've heard all these other things here. And you've heard, of course, about the camera that was in the young girl's room, and the guy was talking to her about how he was Santa Claus and wanted to be her best friend. So all of this stuff is very dangerous. And Ring, of course, has been held to a very high standard because so many of us have them. It's getting better, but it's slow. And the big thing is that IoT devices are not routinely monitored for malware, so that's another problem. Like I said, they don't have security in mind. So one of the best stories comes from 2014 when a smart refrigerator, a number of them, started transmitting spam. So even a smart refrigerator can be co-opted. And in fact, in this case, 750 emails were sent in bursts of 100,000 at a time, and there was no more than 10 from any one IP address. So it was a pretty sophisticated attack and very hard to block, even if you have some security on your system. This is interesting because we have a standard, a new standard for encryption, and that standard was broken before it was actually made available publicly. So very quickly, the old standard was WEAP, which is instantly crackable. WPA can be cracked in a couple of minutes. WPA2, which in fall of 2017, a vulnerability was discovered, and that's when they came up with the new standard of WPA3. But before they got it on the market, two of the geniuses who had cracked WPA2 cracked WPA3. So for the moment, the best advice we can give you is to go and look at your router, make sure that you look and see what kind of security it has, and it needs to have WPA2. And as soon as you start seeing routers that support WPA3, you need to buy one for home. That's a given.
Yep, and WPA3 routers are now available for purchase.
Are they available now?
Yep.
I didn't realize that. When did they come available?
Starting about a year ago.
But they didn't really push it very much because they hadn't.
They had to pass. They haven't fixed the bugs. Yes.
Yeah. So I think I might wait until well, would you get it now, or would you wait until they totally fix it?
I mean, they say they fixed it, they patched, but who knows? There's some little skepticism.
Well,
so
keep listening and reading to see when you should go there, I guess.
Yeah, but it's coming. It's coming. So some of the things you can do, whether using WPA2 or WPA3, on all your devices, as Sharon mentioned earlier, is we strongly recommend that you change the default values. And this is because any hacker, any teen, anybody within range of your wireless network, they can do a Google search to gain access, to learn what the administrator username is and what the default password is, as well as some of the default configuration values. So we always recommend that you change the defaults. And again, they can be used by neighbors or other people sort of to hijack your wireless network, to connect up to it, to do things that they shouldn't be doing.
And the story that we have about that is really pretty terrifying for a lawyer, because my husband and partner, John, has a friend who is a lawyer in Connecticut, and he got a knock on the door one night. He was home with his family and the dog, and opened the door, and it was the FBI, and they had a warrant, and they said that there was child pornography being downloaded from his IP address, and they terrorized his family. They scooped up all the computers and other devices, including gaming consoles, and in point of fact, it was being downloaded from the IP address of his home, but our friend did not have his home network secured, and so it was the guy across the street that was doing all the child porn downloading. But you can imagine what a chaotic situation he was in, and how he had to obtain an attorney and prove all this stuff. I think he now knows a lot more about technology than he used to, but it gives you some idea why it's so important for you to make sure your home network is secure.
So some of the configuration values that we recommend you look at and change, and we'll sort of walk through this list here. First, if you can change the administrator username, we recommend you do that. Change it from the default admin or administrator to something unique. The password, again, change the password to something that is strong, something that is 12 or more characters that can't really be brute forced or guessed. The wireless network name, which is the SSID, this is what your wireless device will broadcast, and it is what is discovered on all your computers and electronic devices. So it's best not to give it, a name of your address, your family's last name, but something unique. The IP addresses given out by leased by your router and firewall. That the network itself, we recommend changing. Typically, it defaults to 192.168.1.1 network, and we recommend changing that to something different. And again, it helps with thwarting attacks and scripts. Most firewalls and wireless routing devices will come pre-enabled or pre-configured to allow remote administration. Essentially, this allows anyone on the internet to connect up to your router or firewall to administer it. Once they are able to guess the username and password, and again, going back to the default, if you've not changed them, they can gain access to your wireless device and potentially connect to it. WPS is Wi-Fi protected setup. This was created several years ago to help home users and consumers connect their wireless laptops and tablets and other smart devices to the wireless network without having to type in a password. So simply you would press a button on your wireless router, and you would go to the computer or system you wanted to connect, and the two devices would automatically connect with one another, communicate with one another. We recommend that you disable that because it does present some security issues, because knowing the password to your network is not required. We do recommend, in terms of securing your local network, something called MAC address filtration. Essentially, this tells the firewall and the router what devices you want to be able to connect to it. Not only will they need the password to connect to your wireless network, but the serial number, it's a MAC address that's part of the network adapter of the device, has to match in order for the wireless connection to authorize the guest, to authorize the connection. So it's another way sort of to limit or tell the device what systems you're allowing to connect. And secondly, or lastly on this slide, guest access. We don't recommend that you provide your passwords to your wireless network to guests. Many devices nowadays come with the ability to enable and configure a separate guest network for visitors at your house, which keep them totally separate from any of the devices on your network.
And we have another slide that you're going to discuss a little more about that later, right?
Absolutely. Some additional configurations that we talk about and recommend. In terms of hide the network, this is going back to the last slide, the SSID or the wireless name. By default, your wireless router will broadcast that name, and any device within range can pick it up. We recommend you disable that feature so it's not broadcast. That way you have to know what it is in order to connect to it. Makes it a little bit more difficult. Disable plug and play, universal plug and play. This is, again, a feature that the creators and the firmware developers of these wireless routers included to make connecting devices to your wireless network easier. Again, it's a security risk. We do recommend minimize port forwarding. Typically on a home network, you shouldn't necessarily have to enable port forwarding unless you are hosting some sort of service on your internal network. And then lastly, in terms of signal footprint, by default, the wireless routers, the signal can stretch hundreds of feet, if not hundreds of yards, depending on how open the house is, how many windows you have. And so if you get strong coverage throughout your house and you notice that you're able to get your wireless signal outside in your driveway, maybe you can see it from the street, some wireless routers will give you the availability to sort of turn down the strength of your signal, again, to limit how far the wireless network you have in your house is able to reach. When you get a device from your internet service provider, Verizon, Comcast. Typically, they'll include the default password to your wireless network on a serial number on some sort of sticker on the back of the device. And the reason they do this is by default, Comcast actually knows what the password to your the preset password is to your wireless network, and it's included with your Xfinity account, so you can actually download the Xfinity app and monitor the status, whether you're having any network issues at home via this app. We recommend, since Comcast knows what those values are and knows what devices are connected to your network, we definitely recommend that you change the SSI, your wireless network name and the wireless network password, so that your internet service providers can't gain access and don't store that information about your local network. Xfinity, the devices provided by Comcast and Xfinity, they, by default, enable a guest wireless network. So it's not uncommon if you have an Xfinity home network that if your smartphone's connected to before, if you are traveling or driving around town, Xfinity Wi-Fi has a bunch of mobile hotspots that if you're an Xfinity subscriber, you can connect to. Again, these networks are wide open. They are not secure. And going to the next slide about guest networks, it does allow, again, your family has one network, meaning your computers and your smart devices at your house are secure and maintained separately from any of your guests. It's a complete separate network that you can set up that's enabled for your guests. You can give them the password and it gives them internet access, but it doesn't give them the ability to browse or access any of your computer systems. And when you're dealing with wireless networks, you often can run into issues with whether or not you have a strong signal on a second floor or the basement. So there are devices called network extenders that allow you to sort of bridge and increase the signal strength of your wireless network in other locations of your house. Often these are devices that you would plug into the power outlet, and they would connect to your wireless network and sort of rebroadcast the signal right there, creating a strong connection. There are other options to extend maybe an Ethernet. There's devices you can plug into your Ethernet port that can extend the wireless that way as well, and that's called Ethernet over power.
One of the things we're worst at doing is checking on the security of other people with whom we are connected and who hold our data. So you need to worry sometimes about anybody who's remote but hooked into you or has your data, and that can include paralegals who may be at home or clients, even experts. We've seen some electronic discovery leaked out of a home network. So you need to check on their security as well, and they need to be as aware as you are, hopefully by now, of the home networks.
Yes, and it goes also for other devices, other personal devices you may have. I mean, if you're at home working on a firm-issued laptop and your teen son or daughter are on BitTorrent or peer-to-peer networks, file sharing and downloading music, who knows what types of files and malware they may be getting on your personal system. So you need to make sure that you take the appropriate security steps to configure and set up your personal devices so that they are secure as well.
And Mike's going to talk to you about enterprise security software. I just want to point out that it's very deliberate that Kaspersky remains on this list. The government may have removed Kaspersky from the GSA list, but John and I and Mike, we've all been following Kaspersky for years, and they are, generally speaking, one of the best companies out there. They're ahead of the game always in terms of discovering threats and discovering how to protect against those threats. John and I use Kaspersky at home. That is our network security. So whatever you've heard from the government, be skeptical. They have been, Eugene Kaspersky is quite a character. He has been telling the Russian government to pound sand for as long as we have known about him, and then I'll turn it over to you, Michael.
Yes, but gone are the days where you have separate security solutions for antivirus, anti-malware, anti-spyware. I mean, there used to be a time where you'd have 2 or 3 different pieces of software installed. Nowadays, what the vendors have done is incorporated all of the protections into a single solution, and it's often referred to as an integrated or internet security suite. Whether it's Trend Micro or Kaspersky or WebRoot Secure Anywhere, which we also recommend and use, those products is sort of an all-in-one solution to protect from malware, spyware, and antivirus. But, however, we always point out there is no silver bullet. Malware can and will get in, especially when you're dealing with home computers or work computers where your employees have administrator permissions. Typically, it's common that somebody will get a phishing email, click on a link, and next thing you know, ransomware or some other form of malware has been installed on the computer, and it typically will inherit the permissions that the user has. So if the user is an administrator, next thing you know, the malware installed as administrator. So, what we do recommend, again, there's no silver bullet, but these are very basic steps that you can take to help protect your computer systems.
I just want to mention a couple of things on this slide, and then Mike's going to talk about backup and why they're so important. But we are now seeing, in particular with ransomware, we are seeing the average price of the ransom now is over $80,000, which is an extraordinary increase. And that was true as of the end of 2019. We are also seeing ransomware like the Maze ransomware, and it's M-A-Z-E, that is exfiltrating your data, not just encrypting it. That means they're taking your data out before they encrypt it, and they then threaten to publish it on a public website or the dark web. And so you now have to face the horrible consequence of this is not just ransomware anymore. Now it's an actual data breach, which you are probably going to have to report in almost all states. So this gives even more importance to the home network, because anything you can do to keep ransomware from your home network will also, consequently, like the dominoes falling, it will keep it from your law firm network, so that when you go to work, you don't bring any of that stuff with you. Very, very dangerous. But we are in a period now where that kind of ransomware, it's very difficult to do anything about some of that, and we are seeing, by the way, a 98% people are giving back these criminals. There's some honor among thieves, apparently. They are, in fact, producing the decryption key. That used to be a 50-50 proposition in early 2019. So that has really come a long way. But it is really important to recover from ransomware at all, and you have seen this by all the cities that have been struck in the United States and have been brought to their knees. You need to have backups, and now it's yours, Mike.
And so if the backup, if you have a backup stored on a USB drive that is connected to your computer system or server, that will not allow you, in most circumstances, to recover from ransomware. Ransomware will target any network devices, network drives, or physically connected devices to your computer system. So we've seen many occasions where firms have their only backups on a connected USB drive, and all of a sudden they are encrypted and cannot be recovered.
Or a connected USB drive
to your system. So what we recommend is that firms that still want a local backup, something to keep in a fire safe when not in use, you can use a local USB backup, but we recommend you disconnect it when the backup's not running. But simultaneously, we recommend that you look into having an off-site backup, an encrypted off-site backup, such as something often through like Carbonite, where your data in an incremental fashion is sent out to a third-party storage facility. It's encrypted, and the ransomware cannot get it. So as you start to develop your backup solution and process, one thing you need to make sure is that you have multiple copies of your data in different locations, one local, one off-site, encrypted. But you also want to make sure that your data is available. So when you're going through a disaster, when you're going to recover from ransomware, you can get access to your data. You know it's available, and you've done test restores. You've taken folders and files that are stored in these backups, and you've actually put them back on your computer system. You make sure it works. You know how it works. So that way, in the event you ever need it, you know what the process is to recover your data. The last bullet there, we list some of the vendors that offer external or outsourced encrypted backups that you can subscribe to. And one other thing that we're seeing now that's come out is something called ransom cloud. It's ransomware when it infects your computer system. It's now gaining credentials to your cloud accounts like Office 365 or OneDrive, and it's actually replacing and encrypting the files you have stored in the cloud with encrypted files. So there are now a lot of these outsourced solutions here, such as Backblaze offers a product solely to back up your Office 365 data. And it's also something that we recommend your firm look into, especially if you use Office 365 for all the different services.
And some of you may be able to do all of this stuff yourself. You may need somebody to consult with to give you some advice. And generally speaking, lawyers don't want to spend a lot of money. So there are, in fact, budget-friendly solutions to all of this. But it's very important that so that we are all in ethical compliance with Rule 1.6 confidentiality and Rule 1.1 confidence, that we are aware of the benefits and risks associated with our use of technology. And I think there we are. If there are questions, would you let us know, please?
Yeah, well, this is Heidi. I've actually taken over for Susan due to some technical issues. But I just want to, first, I want to thank Sharon and Michael for this fantastic presentation. This is such great information, and so everyone knows, these are two of the foremost experts in cyber security technology. So, so they're fantastic resources. I do not see any questions at this time. If you do have a question, please put it in the chat box. If not, you should have contact information for Sharon and Michael. It's in the webinar. Do you have it on a slide as well?
I don't believe we do.
Okay.
However, if you send to Sensei, SENSEI at senseient.com, that will get through to me.
Okay, fantastic. We do actually have one question that came in, and the question is about how to whether using a hotspot is an adequate option for security purposes.
Those transmissions are encrypted, and yes, we are very keen on mobile hotspots. Now, we weren't talking today about what do I do when I go to Starbucks or a hotel or any place where there's open internet at an airport, and the answer is you don't use that. You use your mobile hotspot. If you need to, bring a power pack with you so that you can get your phone charged up or keep it charged in the airport or wherever, but use that mobile hotspot because that is infinitely more secure.
And
Anything else, Mike?
I love that that's so easy. Also, with all of these different phone plans, you can just add a hotspot for what, $10 a month? It's so easy.
It's not expensive, and really, again, when you configure your hotspot, take all the same principles we just talked about when you set up your home wireless network. Just make sure you don't create an open, unencrypted network for your mobile hotspot. You'll be fine.
Right. And so just to follow up on what someone's asked here in terms of the hotspot, so that you can use the hotspot from your phone to connect other devices. So that's how it works. It basically creates a wireless network. So hopefully that is responsive to your question. We do have another question here. Can you recommend any professionals who can conduct a review of our office or home systems? Well, I could recommend a few, a couple that are on this call. I mean, Sharon and Michael, do you do that sort of thing?
Yes, we do, and we can provide remote assistance. We don't have to be physically present to assist often. But having said that, obviously, I want to indicate that there are qualified people. The big thing is that I think that there are a lot of people who are unqualified, so I wouldn't rely on a geeks or us. or anything like that. You want somebody who really knows something about cybersecurity, and our own preference is always that they have cybersecurity certifications. IT and cybersecurity are related, but they are not the same. So you
Right.
definitely want someone who can cross over into cybersecurity and who stays very up to date with all this stuff, because it changes day by day. And we all read at least 2 hours a day, and I still wouldn't say we've kept up. It's just massive how fast this thing happens.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the other thing that you can do is you can always come to LOMAP first and talk to us, and then we can get you to the right people. I mean, we may refer you out to Sharon and Michael or someone else, but we can give you a list of referrals as well. So if that's helpful to you, we're happy to do that, since we're a free resource, but we're not specialists in any particular area. Yes.
Let me just add that it tends to be a one-time stop. So someone will assess your network and they will help you to fix it. But after that, you're probably fine unless some very fundamental tectonic shift occurs. So it's usually just a one-stop operation.
We do have another question here, which is so the question is cable, I'm not sure, it must be cable Comcast or some sort of internet provider that provides boxes and systems with voice remotes, wireless connections. Did these pose security risks to home offices in the same location? So I'm thinking that they're talking about when you get a modem and router all in one from like Verizon or Comcast, and whether that's sufficient.
Yes, I mean, we always recommend that you put your own personal device on the back end of that, that you control. But I mean, certainly I have Xfinity at home, and I don't use their router, but you can configure their router for WPA2 with a secure password, and you can disable everything we talked about in the slides. But as long as your smart devices, whether it's a remote or Alexa or Google Nest or anything Sharon talked about, is using the same WPA2 encryption and the strong password, you should be okay.
Okay. And then we have another follow-up to the hotspot question, and the question is whether if you buy a hotspot from AT&T for 50 gigabytes, is that a safe method for airport travel? And I mean, I think I can answer that and say yes. It's the same as a hotspot on your phone. So you can buy a separate device that has a hotspot. I was just making the point that it's easy to purchase a hotspot on your mobile device if you already have a mobile device and you want to use it on your mobile device. So you can have a separate device to do that.
Your advice is excellent. I will say that we are seeing less and less of the MiFi devices because more and more people are simply going to their phone rather than carrying another device, and that has been the trend.
Right. That makes sense. That makes sense. But if you're worried that you're not going to have power or something like that, you're using your phone for something else, then sure, another device is perfectly fine. All right. Any other questions here? Not seeing any others. All right. So I don't see any other questions, but again, feel free to send questions to LOMAP, to myself, to Susan. We're happy to answer these questions and then get you to a specialist in this area if that's what you need. And so I want to go ahead and I want to thank Sharon and Michael again for this fantastic presentation, excellent resources. This will all be on demand as well. So thank you, Sharon and Michael. Really appreciate your time.
Well, we certainly appreciate your inviting us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just want to let everyone know that our next webinar is on March 25th, and we will have Roberta Tepper, who will be talking about digital detox. I know that's something that Sharon presents on as well. So we will hear that next month. So thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic day.